What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does. Now, I just done a video yesterday talking about the shadow campaign, right? I've done a video in the past where I laid out everything the shadow campaign was, exactly how the Democrats, but there was one aspect that I missed in that I didn't cover that is very, very important. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the Democrats because it comes from a private organization, right? It's not democratically controlled. Technically, it's employed by Democrats, and they're nothing but liberals that work for this company, but it's something that I think the public needs to know about, so I'm going to go ahead and put this out there. There's some news come up on it, so I'm going to go ahead and cover it. Check this out, you guys. Dr. Robert Epstein unmasks severity of Google's election interference. So that's right. So now we talked about the Democrats hiring hordes of Democrat activists to go around and go to people's houses, knock on doors, and get them to fill out their mail-in ballots and do all this blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. If you don't know the drill, go check that video out. It's very, very important to understand exactly how the Democrats stole the election. But there's another aspect to this, and Dr. Epstein is on the case. This guy, he's not a conservative, he's not a Republican, he's actually a liberal, but he points this out because, in his words, it's a threat to our democracy. It undermines democracy at every single turn. It's basically, we're being ran by corporations. They interfere with the elections. Now, talking about, you know, how the Democrats, they got all these people, they changed laws and changed rules. Well, there was that other aspect that I'm talking about, Google. Google interferes in the election. Now, this is something I've touched upon before in the past, how Google will actually send out notifications to Democrats, to registered Democrats, reminding them to go vote. And they don't do that for Republicans.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so because obviously it's a crime against a constitutional republic, but it pales in comparison. For example, we talked about on this program the Dominion voting machines paling in comparison to just what big tech has done. Now, that is absolutely, in other words, if it makes someone nutty to believe that the election is rigged through interference or through bias, well, then I guess we're both nutty, because this is exactly what we're talking about right here. This is not an honest and fair election when the most powerful companies that have ever existed on Earth are interfering against the will in some instances, certainly as we see right now. If the election was held today, Donald Trump is president, you know it, I know it, everyone on MSNBC, CNN knows it. They don't want that to happen. It's pull out all the stops. That's interference, in my opinion.
If people go to americasdigitalshield.com, and you scroll down, you'll actually see a list of some of the many elections that Google has rigged. And we know this beyond the shadow of any doubt. We know how to factor Google out of an election and see what the results would have been. Mm-hmm. And one of the elections that we list is the 2020 presidential election, because in that election, Trump won only 5 out of the 13 swing states, which is why he lost in the Electoral College. When we factor Google out in 2020, Trump would have won 11 of the 13 swing states and easily won in the Electoral College. Moreover, we calculated that Google shifted at least 6 million votes to Joe Biden, whom I supported, by the way, although I regret that. Yeah. But the point is, Google shifted at least 6 million votes to Joe Biden. And think about that. By how many votes did Joe Biden win the popular vote? Well, I think it was around 7 million or so. If you factor Google out of that election, the popular vote itself would have been virtually tied.
Right.
That's how powerful Google and to a lesser extent the other tech companies are.
Yeah.
And people are just unaware. They're getting distracted by stuff which is much smaller scale, inherently competitive, has little net effect, you know. And that's what the tech companies are making us do. They're making us look over here, look over here.
Yes.
There's nothing over here where we are. Look over here.
Yes.
And like I always say, the corporate press, big tech, all these platforms, these are all liberals, right? These companies are headquartered all in California, so these people have biases. They don't like conservatives. They think we're bigots. They think we're evil, right? Christians are evil. That blows my freaking mind. What? These holy people that just want to live life, they want to be left alone for the most part, right? Like, that's my life. I'm just a regular dude who just wanted to be left alone. And I keep seeing all this crap from the government with Congress, with the social media platforms, all this swaying, this lying that they do in these news stories. And it just blew my mind. And I have to voice my opinion on this because this is tearing this country apart. We do not want to be ruled by a one-party state, Democrat, liberal, authoritarian regime. Yeah, we don't want that. We don't live that way. We don't have those same values that they do in California. They're so tolerant, right? They're the party of tolerance and compassion and all this BS, right? They can't tolerate anything that's not far left. That's completely hypocritical, and it goes to show that when these people get in power, they will do anything and everything they can to impose their will upon everybody. Now, you get conservatives out there, we just want things like, we don't want you to have the right to kill your baby. Yeah, pretty much it. We want to have a moral standard, and that's it. We're not going to force you to be a Christian. We're not going to force you to live the way we do. We're not going to force you to read the Bible. None of that. You live how you want to do, but there is certain moral and ethical standards that we all must live by for our country to function, and these people have a totally different ethical standard. So, goes to tell you, do you really live in a free country if the government is allowing big tech social media platforms to interfere in elections? Yeah, that's a good question. Let's get into the story, though. Google researcher Dr. Robert Epstein gave the Texas State Senate a crash course in the nefarious election interference that big tech has been using to manipulate U.S. politics for years. Epstein told the Texas State Senate Committee on State Affairs Wednesday he identified 10 new forms of influence that the internet has made possible and that are controlled exclusively by big tech companies. He labeled them among the most powerful forms of influence ever discovered and more dangerous as they are nearly invisible to users. According to Epstein, our great nation unknowingly turned over its elections to big tech companies in 2012, and the 2020 presidential election was only one of hundreds of elections that Google has flipped. This year, Epstein predicted Google could shift between 6.4 to 25 million votes, and YouTube recommendations alone could alter users' opinions by 40% or more. The demographic most vulnerable to this kind of manipulation are moderate Republicans, according to Epstein, and that is why I am on this platform. That is why I am here, voicing my opinion, letting people know that Congress is corrupt, big tech is corrupted, because this is totally unfair. They promote left-wing and liberal ideologies over right-wing ideologies, right? They will try to disincentivize you from looking up videos like this one. Just look at my view counts. That's all you got to do. Just the other day, I went to look up the Twitter files. I wanted a little bit of information. As a matter of fact, that was yesterday for my video from yesterday, talking about the shadow campaign and all that BS. I went to look up the Twitter files, and I never came across any unbiased opinions. Everything was all left-wing pundits talking about, oh, there's nothing on the Twitter files. Oh, they didn't commit a crime. It was nothing but left-wing stuff, scrolling endlessly. It took me forever to find something that was unbiased. It was actually a congressional committee hearing that I found, and it was like, why? Why won't they give a different opinion on this, right? Like, and it's YouTube recommendations, Google recommendations. So when you go to Google something, right, you're going to get left-wing skewed opinions. They don't give you a balanced list of stuff you can look up. It's all skewed one way or another, and that is one way they do it. You know, the other way is by sending reminders and telling people they need to vote, right? Just like getting the Democrat activists to go to door to door to door to get all these people. Just like that, it's the same thing. Changing rules, changing laws around elections to sway an election in a certain way. That is election interference. And we do not live in a free country if elections are being pushed in a certain direction by large corporations that run everything, right? Google has monopolized search engines, essentially. I mean, sure, there's other search engines out there, but Google isn't. I mean, it comes standard on your phones these days. But it's just craziness. It's just stuff you got to watch out for, but that's what I'm here for. So share this video with anybody and everybody. You know, word of mouth is the best form of advertising. Epstein then offered solutions on how to make Google and other companies accountable to the public. Specifically, he suggested declaring Google's index, a database that they use to generate their search results, to be a public commons. He added, second method is you set up a large-scale system that will preserve and analyze the actual data that these companies are sending to real users. In other words, to track them, to do to Google what they do to us and our children 24 hours a day. Epstein's system stores data from some 14,000 non-biased voters, tracking and capturing ephemeral experiences like search results. These experiences sway minds but quickly vanish without leaving hard evidence, until now. For example, Google is now sending register to vote reminders to Democrats at 2.5 times the rate in which they are sending them to Republicans, Epstein stated. Right now, Google's YouTube is recommending shockingly violent and sexual videos to children and teens. He urged the Texas Senate to take action to help ensure a system could be built to produce court-admissible data in all 50 states. Monitoring works because it makes them accountable, he argued. And he is right about that. They do that. This is one of the reasons a lot of people want to ban TikTok. Not talking about the congressional bill that was passed to divest TikTok. Don't let people out there lie to you. They're not trying to ban TikTok. That's not the point of that legislation. They want them to divest from China because China has access to our data. And there's national security concerns with that. I don't get it, but I'm not all that deep off into it. I don't like China involved in our economy because of what the Communist Party does. I'm not a big fan of communists. I would be considered an anti-communist, if you will. I can't stand communism. It destroys lives, and it leaves countries with piles and piles of dead bodies. And we have a large communist movement in this country, but they're not going to come out and say they're communists. Oh, we're just socialists. That's communism with a mask on. Indeed, Epstein insisted, but monitoring can stop them. In November 2020, after Senator Cruz sent a threatening letter to the CEO of Google about my research findings, Google that very day stopped its election interference in the Georgia runoff elections. He said further that after his America's Digital Shield went public with our new nationwide monitoring system in November 2023, he marked Google's search results steadily and gradually becoming less politically biased. The threat of big tech election interference remains very real, however, and Epstein was adamant that more action needed to be taken by lawmakers. Google subsidiaries are also greatly complicit in its schemes, Epstein analyzed. Epstein later listed ways YouTube influences users in response to a question. The Up Next and other recommendations are tailored by YouTube for users. In 2018, Google employees had asked the Wall Street Journal about how to use such ephemeral experiences to change people's thinking on then President Donald Trump's travel ban policies, Epstein said. If such methods are weaponized by big tech multiple times over, the more they influence people. People trust algorithms and computers because they think they're inherently objective, so the bias can affect those who notice it, but they're not inherently objective. They are very biased because they are written up and coded in such a way to be biased, to bias out all the stuff that they don't want and bias in all the stuff that they do want. You might not think they can do that, but yes, they can. They most certainly can. Those algorithms are dangerous. As a matter of fact, it's the algorithms and the AI that YouTube uses that it searches through all their videos to where where like when you see one of those warnings below a video, like for climate change or for elections or blah 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 blah, those little pop-ups that you can click on and send you to a wiki link. Yeah, AI scans through videos, right? I just had a video taken down for a couple of hours the other day, and it was for medical misinformation. I was reading out a news story about how the government has started a disinformation campaign, an anti-vax disinformation campaign, and I got flagged for medical misinformation. I had to appeal it and told them, no, this is not medical misinformation. And, I had to make my appeal, and a couple hours later, my video was back up and it's back on. You can go watch that video now. But the AI scans through all this crap. So the AI ties into the algorithm, and the algorithm knows that the biases of videos not long after they're posted. Google will even personalize content for individuals, causing greater impact. You have to have the data, he re-emphasized later, for any real legal challenges to big tech's power to be successful. So we've got to watch out for that stuff. They are going to interfere in the 2024 election. You can be damn sure about that. But once again, like I said, Republicans are finally getting with the program. They're finally starting to see the games that the Democrats play and how they cheat. And I'll still call it cheating. It's not necessarily fraud, even though, my analogy is pretty apt, if I believe. It kind of is fraud in a way because, I'll say it again in case you didn't see that. It's like you got a baseball game going on, right? You got Republicans versus Democrats. Well, just before the game started, the Democrats went to MLB officials and paid them off some money and said, hey, we need you to change the rules around stealing bases. So they went ahead and changed the rules around stealing bases. A couple hours before the game starts, and all of a sudden Democrats are starting to steal bases in the new legal way, and the Republicans are over here like, hey, what's going on over here? They're stealing bases illegally. And the umpire's like, flips through his book. No, everything's fine. Oh yeah, they're doing that. That's just fine. And the Republicans are like, what the hell's going on here? And they get slapped across the face by rule changes that they didn't know about. That's the game the Democrats are playing. So we got to watch out for exactly what they're doing. We got to watch out for our Google searches, because these people most definitely interfere. You saw the video. If it wasn't for Google, Trump would have won the election. And just because Trump's up in the polls doesn't mean, if the line's long at the polling place, I don't have to go vote. Vote by mail, for God's sakes. Vote early if you need to. Just get out and go vote. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for because I don't want to be biased, right? But you all know who you really need to vote for. We need to take back this country. We need to get this country back on track. We don't want to become a communist nation, because that's where we're headed, folks. And that's where we need to not head. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Is this just outright utter BS that these social media companies, Google and all this play, they're trying to sway an election, right? Like what? But in all fairness, if you had that ability to sway an election, would you do it? Let me know down in the comments. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.